Hi everyone. As we learned during our last class, the use of luminance and chrominance information within our layers can be leveraged in order to affect how filters interact with the content of those layers. During class, we used the fractal noise effect, which allowed us to create things such as smoke, fire, and at the same time, we use the same filter to create displacement mapping for other layers. Now, we're going to pick up on a different filter today that makes use of that exact same information, the luminance and chrominance of the layers. So in the past, I used to play with a filter called, I'm going to create a new composition with this, a filter called CC ball action. So the way this worked is once we applied that filter, we had the ability to scatter those little balls that were created by the filter, and we were able to do things such as twisting the layer like so and so on. And most people actually just play with this filter and do that, and they're satisfied, and they're like, okay, it's kind of like a fad, and that's it. There's not much more they can do, and they stop exploring. One of the things that most people miss with this filter is the ability to define which rotation axis you can rotate on and the twisting property. Mainly, this twist property is the thing that I want to focus on today. If you click on that drop down, you will notice that you have a lot of different options from which to pick in order to make these little balls that are created by the effect move around on the screen. So in this case, I want to look at the brightness value. Now, clicking on that doesn't change anything on the filter itself by default. But once I start changing the twisting angle, something starts happening. And it looks like this item is rotating in 3D space, and those items that are based on specific chrominance or luminance either get pushed back or pulled to the front of the composition, as you notice. So this actually interacts with your 3D camera. So if you were to create a 3D camera in this composition and you were to rotate that camera, you actually can see what is happening. Those pixels that are lighter get pushed towards the camera. Those that are darker can get pushed back. So there's, depending on the amount of chrominance or luminance that is affecting that area of the footage, the pixels, or these little balls, I'm sorry, will get moved in 3D space. Where can something like this be useful? Well, not only does it look cool because you can actually do, kind of like morphing kind of thing on this over time, and say you reduce that angle to make things look like they're coming into play from randomness, like that, for example. But let's go ahead and create a new composition, let's say. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new composition. And I am going to add to this composition a solid. Now this solid is just going to, it doesn't matter what color it is, and I'm going to apply to that solid, I am going to apply fractal noise. Just like we did in class. That is, if I can type today. There we go, fractal noise. Now I'm going to leave this as default, as is. And then at this point, I want to also apply that ball action filter. Now you'll notice that basically it picks up and turns everything that is grayscale into the little balls. But remember, I can go back into the twist property and change that to brightness. And I can twist this ever so slightly. So I'm going to twist it about, let's say 10 degrees. Now you'll notice something on the edges of this, as you can see right away. Let me go ahead and create a camera again. Create a camera, and I am going to rotate that camera on my y-axis, on my x-axis, sorry. And as you can see, by looking at this, switch this tool here, you can right away notice that you are creating kind of waves of the formation based on the information on the actual fractal noise. So if I increase my contrast or reduce it, I can make those waves bigger or smaller. Okay. You can also go ahead and create things such as, let's say, let's change, for example, the amount of complexity within the fractal noise. Let's make it 2, and you get more of a smooth wave. You can also increase or decrease the amount of grid spacing. So let's say we make that 2, and it starts getting a little bit more solid. Now, the only drawback that I found with this technique to create kind of like watery effects, and by the way, you can change this over time by changing the evolution. So you can actually create waves by changing the evolution of the fractal noise. The only thing that I find as a drawback is two things. The number one is that you actually get those little dots, no matter how small you go, the little circles. And then if you go to 0 on the grid pattern, you get this moire effect, which is kind of bothersome. You can counter that with a little bit of motion blur. So you could just go ahead and make these 1, for example, and then introduce a bit of motion blur to this. So let's use the Gaussian blur in this case. Drop it in there and make that about 5, for example. And that starts getting rid of the circles and the little moire. But it is kind of difficult. You need to go back and forth quite a bit until you get, a good handle on it. So that's one thing. The other thing that I found that is a bit annoying is the fact that if I pull my camera back, so let's go ahead and switch to my camera and pull it back, you will notice that I get the little waves on this edge and on this edge, but the center of the area of the plane that I'm working with remains pretty much flat. And so I need to take that into account when I am utilizing something like this, say, for example, to create an ocean scene, to be able to have enough on either side so that I don't use the center area as much as possible, so that it doesn't look like it's as flat as what it looks like right now. Then you can also change your settings for getting all kinds of different wave shapes. And like I said, you can animate them over time. And that looks like a liquid simulation fairly easily. You can then use a copy of that same black solid with the fractal noise only, and you can at that moment, switch this to something that's a little bit more, let's say, webby-like. It's almost like strands, and then you just superimpose it on this. Since you're not really using the 3D engine to render this, you can use either one of the two. So you can go back to classic 3D and create some highlights on your waves, on your, as they're cresting. That's something that you can do.